I looked at my brother's Instagram story for exactly 3 seconds before my stomach dropped. There he was, standing in front of a brand new Tesla Model S, keys dangling from his finger, caption reading, "Thanks, Dad," 20 minutes later. My sister posted a photo of herself in front of a townhouse in Brooklyn Heights. Not renting, owning. The caption? "Dreams do come true. Dad's gift came through. It nother natus." Channel. I sat there in my studio apartment in Queens, staring at my phone, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Our father had passed away 2 weeks ago. The will reading was yesterday, and apparently, everyone got their inheritance except me. Well, that's not entirely true. I got something. I got a leather journal and a bus ticket to a town in Vermont I'd never heard of. The lawyer had handed me the envelope with this apologetic smile, like he felt sorry for me. My brother couldn't even hide his smirk. My sister at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. My stepmother, Janet, just examined her nails, clearly bored now that the important part was over. "A journal?" My brother had laughed. "That's so, Dad. Always thought Natalie was his little writer." I wasn't a writer. I was a marketing coordinator at a startup that paid me barely enough to cover rent. But sure, because I read books and kept a diary in high school, I was the family writer. "There's a note inside," the lawyer said quietly, sliding the envelope across the table to me. I opened it right there, not caring that everyone was watching. Dad's handwriting, shaky from the illness that took him, covered a small card. "Natalie, this journal belonged to my father, and his father before him. Inside, you'll find an address in Maple Ridge, Vermont. Go there. Trust me, you'll understand everything. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you while I was alive. I love you more than you know. Dad." My brother had peered over my shoulder. "Maple Ridge? Isn't that where Grandpa used to disappear to every summer?" I'd nodded, remembering. "Our grandfather, Joseph Whitmore, died when I was 12. Every June through August, he'd vanish to Vermont, coming back in September tan and relaxed. Dad always said it was where Grandpa had a cabin, nothing special." "So, you get a field trip to Vermont and a dusty book," my sister said, trying to sound sympathetic but failing. "I'm sorry, Nat. That's really unfair." Janet had finally looked up. "Well, your father always had his reasons. I'm sure there's a lovely sentiment in it." The way she said sentiment made it clear she thought it was worthless. They all left to celebrate their fortunes. I sat in that conference room for another 20 minutes, turning the journal over in my hands. It was old, the leather worn soft. When I opened it, I found pages and pages of entries, some dating back to 1952. My grandfather's handwriting, young and strong, filled the early pages. The last entry, written just weeks before he died, was circled in red, 243 Birch Lane, Maple Ridge, VT. The truth is here. The bus ticket was for the following Monday. I spent the weekend in a fog. My brother posted more photos, the Tesla in different locations around the city. My sister started a whole Instagram series about her new place, room by room. My phone buzzed with notifications, people commenting how lucky they were, how generous my father had been. Nobody asked what I got. Nobody even remembered I existed. Sunday night, I called my best friend Maya. She'd known my family for years, had seen the dynamics firsthand. "They gave you a bus ticket?" She sounded outraged. "Nat, your dad had money. Like, real money. He gave your brother a $100,000 car, and your sister a down payment on a Brooklyn townhouse. And you get public transportation to Vermont? And a journal," I added weakly. "This is insane. You should contest the will." "On what grounds? That my feelings are hurt?" Maya sighed. "Just promise me you'll call the lawyer, get some answers." I did call the lawyer Monday morning, right before I was supposed to get on the bus. He was kind but firm. "Your father was very specific about the distribution of his assets. I'm not at liberty to discuss his reasoning, but I can tell you, he spent a long time on his will. Every decision was intentional. So he intentionally wanted to give me nothing? I didn't say that. I said every decision was intentional." He paused. "Miss Whitmore, I've been doing this for 30 years. Sometimes the most valuable inheritances don't look like money." I wanted to throw my phone. Instead, I hung up, grabbed my backpack, and headed to Port Authority. The bus ride to Vermont took 6 hours. 6 hours of watching the city disappear into suburbs, suburbs into small towns into forests and mountains. I had the journal open on my lap, reading through my grandfather's entries. Most of them were mundane. Weather observations, notes about fishing, comments about people in town. But every so often, there'd be an entry that stood out. Another shipment arrived today. The operation is growing faster than I anticipated. Or, met with the lawyer about the trust structure. It has to be airtight. The family can never know until the time is right. What operation? What trust? Maple Ridge turned out to be one of those picture-perfect New England towns that looked like it belonged on a postcard. The bus dropped me off at what passed for a station, a small shelter next to a general store. It was late afternoon, the autumn sun turning everything gold. I asked the clerk at the general store about Birch Lane. She looked at me curiously. "You looking for the old Whitmore property?" My heart jumped. "You know it?" "Everyone knows it, honey. But nobody goes up there much anymore. Mr. Whitmore passed years ago, and the place has been locked up tight ever since." She studied me more carefully. "You, family?" His granddaughter. Her expression softened. "Well then. Birch Lane is about 2 miles north. Follow Main Street till it turns into Route 7, then take the third left. Can't miss it. Big iron gates." I thanked her and started walking. The October air was crisp, carrying the smell of wood smoke and fallen leaves. This town felt like another world compared to Queens, quiet and still in a way that made my city-trained ears feel weird. The gates, when I reached them, were indeed big. Iron scrollwork, old-fashioned and elegant. They were also locked with a chain and padlock. Beyond them, I could see a long driveway disappearing into the trees. I was standing there, wondering if I'd come all this way just to stare at a locked gate, when a voice behind me said, "You must be Natalie." I spun around. An elderly man stood on the road, hands in the pockets of a worn Carhartt jacket. He had kind eyes and a gentle smile. "I'm sorry," I said. "Do I know you?" "Not yet. I'm Henry Morrison. I was your grandfather's attorney." "And his friend." He pulled a key from his pocket. "I've been waiting for you." My hands were shaking as he unlocked the gate. "How did you know I'd come?" "Your father called me a month before he passed. Said you'd figure it out eventually, that you were the only one who would." Henry pushed the gate open. "He wanted me to wait here every day starting the week after the will reading. Said you'd need time to decide, but that you'd come." We walked up the driveway together, our shoes crunching on gravel. "Everyone in town thinks this place has been empty for years," Henry said. "That's intentional. Your grandfather valued his privacy. So did your father." "My father knew about this place?" "He came here every year, same as your grandfather, usually in the summer. Said he told your family it was business trips." Henry glanced at me. "You really don't know anything, do you?" "I know my grandfather disappeared every summer. I know my dad left me a bus ticket and a journal instead of the car and house he gave my siblings. And I know everyone thinks I'm the family disappointment." Henry stopped walking. We'd reached a clearing, and there, in front of us, sat a house, not a cabin, a house. 2 stories, classic Vermont farmhouse style, beautifully maintained. Beyond it, I could see other buildings. A barn, what looked like a workshop. "Your grandfather built an empire," Henry said quietly. "And he built it here." The house was unlocked. Inside, it was like stepping into a perfectly preserved piece of history. Vintage furniture, but clean and cared for. Photos on the walls, my grandfather young and smiling, standing next to buildings and trucks and groups of people. Henry led me to a study on the 2nd floor. He opened a filing cabinet and pulled out a folder, setting it on the desk. "Whitmore Timber Company," he said. "Established 1952. Your grandfather started with 1 truck and a handshake deal with a local mill. By 1985, he owned timber operations across Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. Sustainable forestry before it was fashionable. He sold to a large conglomerate in 1995 for $28 million. I felt dizzy. $28 million? He took that money and invested it. Very carefully, very wisely." Henry opened the folder. Inside were documents, statements, certificates. The Whitmore Family Trust. Current value: approximately $74 million. The room tilted. I grabbed the desk to steady myself. Your grandfather never told anyone about his success, Henry continued. He lived modestly, drove an old truck, wore the same work clothes. He didn't want his children, your father and your uncle, to grow up entitled, so he kept it secret. My father knew. Your grandfather told him when he turned 30, gave him the same choice he gave his brother: walk away from the trust and receive a one-time payment of $500,000, or agree to keep the secret and steward the trust for the next generation. Henry smiled sadly. Your uncle took the money, started a business, lost it all within 10 years. Your father kept the secret. I thought about my childhood. We hadn't been rich, but we'd been comfortable. Dad had worked as an accountant for a manufacturing company. Nothing flashy. He drove a Honda Accord. We took vacations to state parks, not Europe. Your father added to the trust, Henry said. He was an exceptional investor. When he got sick, he knew he had to make a decision about succession. He spent months considering it. And he chose. Me? It came out as a whisper. Henry pulled out another document. I recognized Dad's signature at the bottom. Read it, he said. I picked up the paper with trembling hands. It was a letter, addressed to Henry but clearly meant for me eventually. I know this will seem cruel to Natalie at first. Her siblings will get immediate, tangible gifts. She'll feel overlooked, maybe even unloved. But I need her to understand what her grandfather and I understood. Real wealth isn't about what you own. It's about what you build, what you protect, what you pass on. Marcus will spend that car money on status. Elena will sell that townhouse the first time she needs cash. They've already shown me who they are with the small amounts I've given them over the years. They measure worth in Instagram posts and dinner party conversations. Natalie is different. She's the only one who visited me in the hospital just to sit and talk, who asked about my childhood, my parents, my dreams. She's the only one who actually reads, who thinks deeply, who questions. She has the patience and wisdom this trust needs. The journal will guide her. The trip to Vermont will test her. If she comes, if she's curious enough and brave enough to follow the breadcrumbs despite being hurt and confused, then I'll know I chose right. I was crying before I finished reading. Henry handed me a tissue. There's more, he said gently. The trust doesn't just sit in accounts. Your grandfather and father used it to do good. There's a scholarship fund for Vermont students, fully funded. A grant program for sustainable forestry initiatives. A charitable foundation that's donated millions to environmental causes. He showed me more documents, all anonymous, all managed quietly. And now? Now you're the trustee. You'll receive a yearly distribution to live on. Whatever you decide is reasonable. The rest stays invested, stays working. You can continue the charitable programs, start new ones, grow the fund. But there's one condition. I looked up at him. You can't tell your siblings. Not for 10 years. That was your father's requirement. He wanted you to have time to understand the responsibility without them interfering, without them demanding their share, without them making it about fairness and money rather than legacy. I thought about my brother's Tesla, my sister's townhouse. 10 years of watching them post their lavish lives while keeping this secret. What if I can't do it? I asked. What if I'm not enough? Henry smiled. Your grandfather started with nothing but a strong back and a good reputation. Your father turned a comfortable life into something extraordinary. You come from people who build, Natalie. It's in your blood. He put a hand on my shoulder. And you don't have to do it alone. I'm here. There's a whole board of advisors your father assembled, people who've been managing pieces of this for years, waiting for the next generation. I spent 3 days in Maple Ridge. Henry introduced me to the board, 4 people who'd known my grandfather and father, who managed different aspects of the trust. There was Margaret, the investment advisor, Thomas, who ran the scholarship program, Sarah, the environmental lawyer who handled the foundation, and David, who oversaw the property and physical assets. They were kind and patient, answering my million questions, showing me files and spreadsheets and plans. The scholarship program had put 63 students through college. The Environmental Foundation had protected over 12,000 acres of forest. The grant program had helped 32 small forestry operations convert to sustainable practices. My grandfather and father had built something that mattered, something that would outlive them, and they'd chosen me to carry it forward. On my last night there, I sat in my grandfather's study, reading through more of the journal. I found an entry from 1989. Joseph Jr. took the money today. I'm not angry, it's his choice. But I worry he doesn't understand what he's giving up. It was never about the money. It was about being part of something bigger than yourself. About understanding that true wealth is measured in what you contribute, not what you consume. Then an entry from 2003, in my father's handwriting. Natalie asked me today what made a good life. She's 11. I wanted to tell her everything, show her this place, explain the legacy. But she's too young. Someday, though, she'll understand that the best inheritances aren't the ones you can hold in your hand. I cried again, there in that quiet study, surrounded by the evidence of 3 generations of intentional, thoughtful living. When I got back to New York, my brother called immediately. "Where have you been? We've been trying to reach you." "Vermont," I said, following up on Dad's gift. "The journal thing?" He laughed. "Find any buried treasure?" Something like that. My sister was more direct when she called later. "Nat, listen. I feel bad about how things worked out. The inheritance, I mean. If you need help with rent or anything." The pity in her voice stung, but I understood it differently now. She couldn't imagine value beyond the tangible. Neither could my brother, and that wasn't their fault. They'd been raised the same way I had, but somewhere along the way, we'd learned different lessons. "I'm okay," I told her. "Really." Dad knew what he was doing. Over the next few months, I started learning the business of stewardship. I'd take the train up to Vermont every other weekend, staying in my grandfather's house, meeting with the board, reviewing programs and investments. During the week, I kept my marketing job, kept my studio apartment. I told no one about the trust. It was harder than I expected, watching my siblings' lives unfold on social media. My brother joined a country club. My sister renovated her townhouse, posting every expensive decision. My stepmother, Janet, commented on every post with heart emojis. But I also watched my brother complain about the Tesla's maintenance costs, saw my sister stress about property taxes and HOA fees. The gifts my father gave them came with burdens they hadn't anticipated. Meanwhile, I was learning about compound interest and conservation easements. I was approving scholarship applications from first-generation college students. I was meeting with forestry managers about sustainable harvesting techniques. 6 months after Dad's death, my brother called with news. He was selling the Tesla. "It's just not practical," he said. "The insurance alone is killing me." And honestly, I never really wanted a Tesla. I wanted what it represented, you know? But it turns out, a representation doesn't pay the bills. My sister lasted 8 months before listing the townhouse. "Brooklyn's not really me," she admitted over coffee. "I thought it would be, but I'm in over my head with the mortgage, and Janet keeps making comments about how I should rent it out and move back home to save money." I listened, offered sympathy, didn't say what I was thinking, that Dad had given them exactly what they'd asked for, even though he knew they weren't ready for it. The 1-year anniversary of Dad's death fell on a Thursday. I took the day off, went to his grave, and left flowers. My brother and sister were there too, with Janet. We stood awkwardly together, not knowing what to say. "I sold the house," my sister finally said. "Made a small profit, thank God. The car's gone too," my brother added. "Traded it for something more reasonable." Janet sniffed. "Your father would be disappointed. Those were generous gifts." "I don't think he would be disappointed," I said quietly. "I think he expected it." They all looked at me. "Dad didn't give you those things because he thought you'd keep them forever," I continued. "He gave them to you because he knew you needed to learn something. Maybe that expensive things come with expensive problems. Maybe that what you think you want isn't always what you need. And what did you need to learn from a bus ticket?" My brother's voice had an edge. I thought about the trust, the legacy, the responsibility I now carried. The secret I had to keep for 9 more years. That the most valuable things aren't always obvious. I turned 29 that August. The Trust's yearly report showed we'd grown to 79 million. We'd funded 8 new scholarships, protected another 3,000 acres. I'd approved a grant for a women-owned forestry operation in Maine. My life looked almost the same from the outside. Same job, same apartment, same humble existence. But inside, I was different. I understood now what my grandfather and father had known. That real power comes from what you can build and protect, not from what you can display. My brother got engaged to a woman who loved him for his Honda Civic and his stable accounting job. My sister moved to Portland, started a small business, seemed genuinely happy for the first time in years. Janet slowly faded from our lives, her interest waning once the money was spent. I still kept the journal with me, reading entries when I needed guidance. There was one I returned to often, written by my grandfather in 1994, a year before he sold the company. True wealth is silent. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't seek recognition. It simply exists, doing its work quietly, changing lives without needing credit. The people who understand this are rare. But when you find them, when you raise them, when you pass this understanding on, you've created something far more valuable than money. You've created wisdom. I'd read that to the board at our last meeting, and Margaret had smiled. Your grandfather used to say that money is just a tool. What matters is who's holding it and what they choose to build. I thought about what I was building. Not a Tesla or a townhouse. Something bigger. Something that would outlive me, the way my grandfather's work had outlived him. On my 30th birthday, I got a letter from Henry. Inside was a note in my father's handwriting, dated from when he was still healthy. If you're reading this, you made it to 30. You kept the secret. You learned the business. You understand now why I gave you what I gave you. The others got what they thought they wanted. You got what you actually needed. Purpose, responsibility, and the chance to be part of something that matters. I'm proud of you. I was always proud of you. Love, Dad. There was also a key. Not to a house or a car. To a safe deposit box at a bank in Manhattan. I went the next day. Inside the box was a deed. Property in Vermont, 20 acres adjoining my grandfather's land. And a note. Build what you want. The foundation is here. The rest is up to you. I stood in that bank vault, holding the deed, and I finally understood what my father had been trying to teach me all along. My siblings got their inheritance all at once, bright and shiny and impressive. It made them feel important for a moment, then slowly revealed itself as a burden they weren't ready to carry. I got mine in pieces, in lessons, in quiet revelations that built on each other. A journal that led to a town that led to a trust that led to a legacy that led to understanding who I was and what I was meant to do. They got the things they could show off. I got the things that would last. And 9 years from now, when I could finally tell them the truth, they'd understand why Dad smiled when he wrote that will. Why he knew exactly what he was doing when he gave me a bus ticket instead of a Tesla. Because he didn't give me money. He gave me something far more valuable. He gave me the chance to become the kind of person who deserved to be trusted with it.